On today's episode, two streaming companies are fusing together like Goten and Trunks. Should the zombie craze just die? And I'm going to knock off a wrestling bucket list this coming weekend. Welcome everybody to GeekySteveD episode 3. I am your host, Stephen Diggs Jr., aka GeekySteveD. And well, let's just jump right into it this week. So the big news is that HBO Max and Discovery Plus are merging officially. This has been a rumor for a long time, actually. And it's been going on ever since WB and Discovery merged as a new company, as Warner Brothers Discovery, appropriate enough. So this has been expected, and it's going to be called Max. Does anyone like the name? Because I don't like the name at all. It's very uncreative. I get not calling it HBO because, as people online have even stated, HBO is kind of known for adult content, and not adult as in that, but, just more not necessarily family oriented. It's for content more for, 18-year-old and up. And that's not what they're trying to portray. Discovery's content's adult content as well. They may not say it, but it is adult content. I don't think a kid is watching 90 Day Fiance. I don't think, a 10-year-old wants to watch Extreme Sisters. That's an adult, And so I understand using neither name, just because HBO kind of has its own connotation. So does Discovery. Discovery isn't known for making scripted content. Discovery is known for making reality shows now, I guess, for the most part. And, they used to do a lot more documentaries and things. Like they own the Learning Channel, for instance, but TLC, the channel, and Discovery, the channel, are identical now. Someone try to give me a difference on those two. There's no difference. They follow people's lives, or they follow a group of people's lives, from extreme cheapskates to extreme sisters. There's really no difference between the two channels. So I understand that you have two different types of content and you want to merge them into one platform. And I understand that, but I don't know if the name is the right thing. Max, it's like a guy. Hi, I'm signing up for Max. Max, who's Max? What's so good that you're going to pay the rumored $15 a month for his content? I mean, now we can get into that too, because that's another issue is the price. But, first of all, the name, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if maybe they should have just called it Warner Brothers Discovery, just left it at that. Do we need fancy names for apps if the content on the app is the content that the company owns? They're not licensing content. They're not Sony, who is putting out content on other streaming services. So does it make sense to just call it Warner Brothers Discovery? WB Discovery? Would that have made more sense? I don't know. That seems to make more sense to me. I'm not, but, I'm a creative type, and I've worked around, things like this before, and I don't know. I don't know if I agree with the name. The name's kind of weird. It also just is so generic that I just wonder if someone's just going to, I don't know, do they own Max.com? Someone has to own that name already. Does any of this make sense to you? I don't think. I understand them merging. They're one company. I actually hate when streaming companies have multiple apps. Pretty much all of them do it, but I think of the worst one is the NBC apps. So you have Peacock, that is obviously the Peacock app, that's the NBC stuff. But then let's just say you have their TV service. Okay? Now you got NBC, USA, Sci-Fi, and there's probably 40 other ones. Bravo. There's probably other ones that I'm not even thinking of. NBC Sports has their own separate app as well. It makes it really confusing that you would have multiple apps. I understand putting it all into one, or maybe two, kind of like ESPN Plus, and then you have Disney Plus. So and Hulu's in between, but Hulu's probably going to get merged or disappear in next 6 months to a year anyways. But, I understand kind of separating the sports from the rest of the content. But if you're going to just make an entertainment thing, just make it one. Or if you're going to do a separate free one and then your normal one, much like Tubi has their own separate app, or Pluto is probably a better example because Pluto is owned by Paramount, and there's the Paramount Plus, which is their premium server, streaming service. Then you have the actual free one that is Pluto. So I kind of understand separating them, but we need to make a better name, guys. Someone drop me a name idea. Send me a comment on YouTube, or at me at GeekySteveD on Twitter. I want to know what your ideas are. I just think maybe WB Discovery. You could own the domain too, wbdiscovery.com. You could own all the handles for online, Twitter, Facebook, so on and so forth. I think that's probably just the best name. It's generic, sure, but does anyone care if the name is something super unique? And Max isn't even unique. Max is like a generic name anyways. But I think that's probably the best way to go, is just brand the name. I don't get it. I don't understand it. To me, I just think it'd be better to just actually, make the name of the company the name of your streaming service. WWE did that with WWE Network, which isn't technically, they say it's in Peacock, but it is an actual service in other countries. At least Peacock is tied to the name NBC, since the Peacock is their logo. Paramount is the company, even though it's CBS and all these other channels, Nickelodeon, for instance, and all this. Paramount is the name of the company, so that makes sense. So I think that WB Discovery should do something like that. Who knows? They got time to change it. Everything is in the streaming service right now. The streaming industry is in turmoil, and it's also in a huge flux. I think we're starting to see what the major players are going to be for streaming in forever now, like at least in the long term. I think we're going to weed out the Dumont networks of streaming services. If anyone out there knows who Dumont was, they were one of the early actual network TV stations, but they disappeared. They didn't make it. And a lot of their content's actually still lost. I think they didn't record as much. It was more just kind of live, and they didn't really have a lot for recordings. A lot of old stations did that. There's Doctor Who episodes missing from the BBC, for instance. And I think that, we were in the infancy for the last 10 years of what streaming is. And not just streaming and for movies and TV shows. Also for music. Look at where that's, kind of now cut down to just 2 or 3 real streaming services for music: Spotify, Apple Tunes, Apple Music, that's what it's called. Apple Music. You got Spotify, Apple Music, and then you got like Tidal. So, you've already kind of seen that truncation. There's still SoundCloud, and there's some other things you can do as well. But I'm talking the main ones. There's always going to be your micro niche streaming, just like cable had 400 channels. I subscribe to Shudder. It's just horror movies, right? I subscribe to Full Moon Features. That's just horror sci-fi. They're your niche things. There's Flow Sports for all kinds of weird sports, believe it or not. There's all kinds of wild stuff on there. There's Fight TV for wrestling, boxing, and MMA, and some other combat sports. But, those are going to be around. But the major big guys, the kind of broad spectrum, multi-billion dollar companies, I think we're starting to see the shakedown of that. MGM is owned by Amazon now. You have Warner Brothers Discovery, which will be the new Max platform. You have Paramount. You have Peacock. And, Hulu, whatever's going to happen to Hulu in the next year or so, the common consensus is that Hulu will probably disappear, and most of the content will be merged in to Discovery or Disney Plus, like it is in most of the world, because Disney owns most of that content. Like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the best show, the best comedy of all time. I'm going to go on record right now. That is the best show, best comedy of all time. And That's on Disney, which is just amazing to think about. That it's actually on Disney of all things in other countries. One of the most R-rated TV shows of all time. And it's on Disney with Mickey Mouse and Marvel and Star Wars and all the other crazy content that they have. So I think that that's what's going to happen here. So Hulu's going to be out of the game. And this might be the best time for Warner Brothers Discovery to really make headways into becoming the next big streaming platform. You also have Netflix, obviously, who started and basically is only a streaming service. They didn't have previous content before. Before they were streaming, they were just renting DVDs. They weren't making content. They started making content for their streaming services. And this is going to be the new wave. The other thing that sucks is the price. I've heard $15 or so for the starting package, which would mean that would still include commercials. I don't think they'd probably lock any shows behind a paywall at that price. They better not. That's ridiculous. But I think that's a lot of money. I mean, Netflix is $15, $16 now. Hulu, I keep getting for $1 or $2 a year. If you do it around Black Friday, they were doing it every year. It's like $1 or $2. But I don't know if that'll be around. I even got Disney Plus with that for $2 a month. So I pay like $4 a month after taxes for Hulu and Disney every month. I mean, it's crazy. Like that's I wouldn't even have Disney if it wasn't for that. But I am waiting for X-Men 97. I actually really probably wouldn't even have paid the extra $2 for the Disney if it wasn't for X-Men 97 coming out, I believe, later this year. And I might check out the new Agatha show as well, because I did like Scarlet Witch, even though I haven't been a big superhero fan in a while for the movies. But streaming is kind of going through a lot of turmoil, and a lot of creators are losing jobs or having to kind of switch gears, which is probably the other thing about this. And not just creators, but I mean, people behind the scenes in general. When these companies merge, like I've mentioned before, when WWE and UFC are now merging into a new company, people are going to lose their jobs. The HR departments, people who aren't necessarily creative but work in the creative industry, maybe because they aren't necessarily creative themselves, but they also like working around creative people, and they like having the pride that they help make, WWE do what it is. Someone had to make the payroll. Someone has to drive the truck. Someone has to do all that kind of stuff. Plus, there's a lot of creative jobs like editors, writers. There's all kinds of audio engineers. There's going to be a lot of things like that. Obviously, with movies and stuff, the CG, all the effects departments. And, what does this mean in the long run? Does this mean we're going to have less actual jobs available? There's been a lot of talk about that all the streaming services paid too much for all of the properties that they own, and then also just other things that they've created, all the new shows. The new Lord of the Rings show was the most expensive TV show of all time. Think about that. In the history of TV, almost 100 years or so, it is the most expensive TV show of all time. And I'm sure even if you adjust that for the actual market of whatever time period, I'm sure it's still, it was, I don't know, it was $1 billion or something for a whole season. It was crazy. And that's probably too much. I mean, that's a lot of money. I think that there might be a play for cheaper content that is still good. I'm one of the biggest horror and sci-fi fans, right? And you could make a movie like They Live for a fraction of what it cost back then. Just think about that. That's a very influential movie. To this day, everyone still talks about it. It's beloved. It's from that just amazing time period of the 80s where it was just creativity and letting people do things, just kind of like They Live's kind of like a collision of all the awesome stuff. And it wasn't that big of a budget then, and it definitely would not be that big of a budget now. I think of a show that you could maybe even do cheap would be like a superhero soap opera. I think a superhero soap opera is something that I can't believe no one has done. First of all, I can't believe sci-fi hasn't done it. Sci-fi needs cheap programming. They've always needed cheap programming. And in the last couple of years, they've actually been spending money with Chucky. They had Z Nation there a while back. They've had a couple other shows too. But I'm surprised they haven't tried to take Guiding Light, Days of Our Lives, but make it a superhero show. Same concept, very bare bones sets that you reuse all the time. You could think of 66 Batman without the cheesiness. I mean, if you wanted to go that route, you definitely could. I have no problem with making a new 66 Batman show for sure. But imagine a lot of that show is the same sets. It was the Commissioner Gordon office. You had Batman's lair. And then you had, the kind of like wherever the villain of the week would be holding people hostage. It could have been in a refinery, even though it was just a building with some like big circular drums or something. It's very like you have like 2 or 3 actual rooms that are kind of standard all the time, and then you have 1 or 2 that are specific to the thing happening in the show. But you could do it in a way that you could just kind of redress them very quickly. And I think that could work. And I think it could work. And you do it with your own characters. There's nothing saying you have to use established characters, because that might also drive the cost up as well, just because people's expectations are going to be different. And I think that you could get away with just actually making something with new characters, have interesting stories. A lot of the best superhero stuff is character driven. They live, that's top 5 science fiction movies for me all time. That's a very character-driven show as well, or movie as well. And you could make something like that as a movie. You could make a superhero soap opera. You could make a lot of the great 70s and 80s science fiction movies. You could make for a fraction of the budget they made then. You could redo a lot of stuff with just modern techniques. Full Moon Features makes movies for really, I don't know what their budgets are, but they can't be a lot. But they have this dedicated following and people who will watch everything that they put out. They make, I think Charles Band, who's someone I would love to get on this show. I think Charles Band said that in 2022, or maybe it was this year in 23, they're making like 12 to 15 movies this year alone. And they're all going to be on their app. They're also free on Tubi, and they're on YouTube. The YouTube ones are edited, but they are on Tubi as well, and they're pretty much unedited on there. I mean, there's a way to make things that make sense within your budget. Horror movies traditionally are the cheapest budget in Hollywood, and almost all of them make their money back. If you look at all the ones that hit theaters, and you just quick search, you just go to Wikipedia and you go, budget gross in the theater, they usually make their money back. And that's not including any home rental sales. Plus, horror movie fans buy a lot of merchandise. That's something that you can capitalize on as well. Full Moon sells all kinds of Puppet Master merchandise. They always sell all kinds of just different unique things, and a lot of companies could do that. Chucky, there's a lot of Chucky dolls out and Chucky material right now because of the show. You could do that more. You could continue to do that, and you could make a ton of money, but not have to have these budgets that are just crazy. Plus, I think some people might like the fact that it wouldn't be overly reliant on CG. CG, I think, is taking people out of movies in some way. Yeah, you want to see your big budgets, but you also want just movies that just kind of come out that it's almost like, it's like your eyes are being forced open and you just got all this barrage of just computer graphics just shooting at you. And it becomes a lot. Sometimes you just want to hear people talk and come up with interesting ideas. And imagine a superhero movie that was more like a Tarantino movie, for instance. Tarantino movies, outside of the more recent ones where they're very big sets because they're time period pieces and things like that. But imagine a Reservoir Dogs. That's a movie you could make a really cheap nowadays. Imagine a Reservoir Dogs, but it's superheroes, or it's aliens, or it's a fantasy world, or something like that. Those concepts are very simple, but could be done very well. Kevin Smith makes a living making, cheaper budget movies compared to the rest of Hollywood, but makes a killing and makes a return on his movies, which is the reason why he's able to continue to make Clerks 1, 2, 3, the hugely undervalued Clerks animated series. You know, I think he's working on Mallrats 2 right now, or I think the script and maybe some other stuff for it. He just was touring Clerks 3 for a long time. He, is always able to make movies and then use his characters in a sandbox. He had comic books just come out called Quick Stops that were awesome. They were like tie-ins to different characters from the universe. I've heard rumors he might also be getting Dogma back, so we might get something new with Dogma. Can you just imagine the fact that he can do this, but he doesn't require, I need $100 million budget. I need $5 million. So for $5 million, they're getting their money back. If you were a studio and you did that you had $5 million and you had $100 million, but then you took $5 million, you're talking, what was that, 20 movies? You can make 20 movies at $5 million and still make a ton of money, but also you don't have to have that risk roll up in one thing. Look at a lot of the DC movies. It's probably safe to say that a lot of the DC movies have caused a lot of friction at Warner Brothers when it was owned by AT&T, because they relied a lot on those movies to make them their money, because they didn't really make a lot of other, big budget movies. I mean, they made Christopher Nolan's movies, but, other than that, a lot of their movies were pretty low budget, or just they didn't make a lot of them. They had just, they put a lot of money into the Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Justice League, which we know how crazy that one was. And even before, they put a lot of money into the Nolan Batman movies, which thankfully those worked out because they were phenomenal. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't have worked out. But look at their TV shows that they did for DC. Their DC shows were generally well liked, and look how long they lasted. Arrow, The Flash. Even before then, you had Smallville. You've had Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning. You've had Supergirl now. I know I'm missing a few. There's a lot, and I'm sure the fraction of the budget is just a slight amount compared to what the movies were. Kevin Smith talked about it when he filmed an episode of Supergirl. He was a director on one of them. He said it almost felt like he wasn't directing. He came in, they knew where to set up, they knew where to sit, they knew where to film every part. They said, okay, this is here on this page, this is going to happen. Okay, the cameraman's already going to set up that shot. You don't even have to go, oh no, we're here, move here, we want to do this, blah blah blah. It was more like cut, paste, ready to roll, which sometimes you want that. Not everything needs to be like some crazy crap going on. Sometimes let's just show what's on the screen. Let's just get to the next shot. Let's just have something happen. And we can still fun on the screen. We're playing with superheroes, playing with Supergirl when he did that. I think Quentin Tarantino had that issue with ER. I mean, so think about that all those years ago when he directed that episode of ER. And I know directors have said that about like Law and Order, for instance. And imagine applying that to just a lot of these shows, like superhero type shows, and you do them in a way that's cheaper budget. My brother, when he makes his films, the last couple that he's made in particular, he really takes about a week or so beforehand and really kind of lays out a diagram. He already knows where he's filming. So then all he does is he kind of knows the layouts of these buildings, like, what rooms and so on and so forth. And then just kind of draws out, like, I'm going to shoot here on this angle. I'm going to shoot here on this angle. I'm going to shoot here on this angle. And then bam, 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 when he's there. Yeah, I mean, things always change. You get there and it's not exactly what you want. But he's able to get in and get out, which ultimately in the long run saves money. That, and also just saves people time. No one wants to just sit around and screw around when they could get it done and over with. And I think that Hollywood needs to look at that. I think Hollywood needs to just look at the low budget guys and just look at a lot of these low budget guys make a lot of money, especially in the 80s and 90s. I mean, yeah, if they look at the home video market and the streaming market is very similar in some ways, they could run this in that fashion. They could have your middle and your low tier budget films come out with your big budget, and make the low budget and the medium budget. That's where like your creativity is. That's where you could explore different themes. You can have crazy different genres, but just make them so cheap that everybody makes money that's involved in the set, and everybody gets to have some kind of something unique and just allow it to happen and allow things to flow and allow things to just kind of happen organically. And if you just kind of plan things out, and I think that, I live in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's been having a lot of films being made here, for instance. And the Pittsburgh Film Office currently right now is working on building a soundstage. I think it's multiple sound stages, actually. There's a lot of big old steel buildings from the steel industry, and a lot of the other major industries used to be here 100 years ago. So the film office is going to take a couple of these buildings and they're actually make sound stages, because Netflix already films here. WB films here. They filmed some of the third Batman movie, the Dark Knight Rises. The scenes with the Batwing, whatever the heck it's called, flying through the city. And then that big like fight on like City Hall where it's like cops and there's Batman in it and all this crap's going on. That was in Pittsburgh. Like, people don't realize that. Like, that's awesome. Like, and imagine now you could have sound stages to do some of this stuff a lot cheaper, and not necessarily sound stages like they are modern. A lot of modern sound stages now where you have these sound stages that they're just like trampoline parks for CG. That's kind of what, like, I've noticed is, like, you get a lot of these they're like trampoline parks for CG. They're just big open rooms with some like props, but it's almost all green or some other neutral color, that then what they can do is input everything in CG. But like I said, imagine if you filmed like the 66 Batman, you could have 50 of those in one of those buildings. Have a couple sets here, a couple sets here, and you could have some kind of general ones. Back in the old school Hollywood days, the Back to the Future set was used all the time. But I love that Back to the Future set. I loved Hill Valley, in all three of those movies. But that's all like a set. That's okay. No one cares. No one cares if the show's good. It's not going to take them out of it. And sometimes it's kind of cool to be like, oh, I know. I think that was in something else. There's like interesting callbacks outside of the movie that sometimes you just kind of get interested in. And I think that they're looking too big picture with CG and all this stuff. Bring it down. Bring the expectations down a bit for that. Horror movies don't need to have a huge budget. They don't need CG, really. Like, you can make, I think we're really due for some good slasher movies, really. Like, so I think like the slasher genre should come back. The entire slasher genre should come back. In the 80s when Friday the 13th and Halloween and all these other major ones, then there just started being a flood of millions of. One of my favorite ones is Nail Gun Massacre. It's a slasher movie where a guy walks around with an air-compressed nail gun and then kills people. So then they're trying to track down who the killer is because they don't know, because he's wearing a full body. It's like a camo work suit. He looks ridiculous. And then he painted a white motorcycle helmet black for no reason. But it's so dumb, and it's terribly acted, but it's so fun. And I just like it. And we could have more of that. That movie cost nothing to make then. It would cost nothing at all to make now. And, there are lots of people who still have the effects skill. Here in Pittsburgh, we have the Tom Savini School for makeup and special effects. There's lots of people even around here in Pittsburgh that could make special effects for people. So use these sound stages to make some lower budget horror movies. Think of it, like I said, like the home videos of the 80s. They were dominated by a lot of lower budget sci-fi, a lot of lower budget horror movies, and then just kind of different kinds of stuff. The 90s had a lot of those erotic thrillers. There was a lot of action films obviously were made in that time period that weren't CG, but they're David Sedaris movies are, they're extremely low budget for what they are, but they're fun as heck. And I think that we could do more of those. And let's still have the big budget movies, but let's just see what happens what if you want to even take a property and do it? Let's say instead of going after Marvel or DC to make one of these like characters, which you could maybe do with a lower budget character, you could do something, with like somebody from Image Comics, get the license to an Image Comics character, get the license to there's a lot, someone from Boom or someone from Dynamite Comics, something from Dark Horse, something that's not going to require a ton of money when you just look at like the page and go, let's just try to make this a movie or a TV show. But let's not try to do it where it's just, $150 million epic. And you can even have the idea of wanting to make sequels. I mean, sequels have been around forever, but I would just I think that, let's try different things. And I think just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks is going to benefit people. But I know that has to make sense in terms of a budget. If you don't have the correct budget, then it's not going to work out, especially in Hollywood where the budgets are just getting crazy high. But if you had a $5 million movie and you made $30 million on it, that's a $25 million profit. Now, what if you do that 10 times? That's $250 million profit. Like, do it. And that would give more people work because now you got multiple projects. You can hire tons of directors, tons of writers, tons of actors, tons of sound guys, tons of lighting guys, tons of everything you can imagine. And it would kind of involve everybody, and you could get different things going on. You could get, if you could make very specific movies for very specific people. You don't have to have everything cater to everyone. When you cater to everyone, you cater to no one. That's kind of an old general marketing and sales thing that, if it's so broad, it doesn't work for anyone unless it's something that isn't required by everyone, like toilet paper, or a car. But, outside of that, in general, I think that's something that is sorely missing in the movie industry. And I'm hoping that they use this as a time to be creative and not as a time to just cut down on the budget of everything. Because, right now it looks like we're going to be in a recession, most likely if we're not in a recession now. And so one of the best ways is to tighten your budget, which is always dangerous in these kind of things because you can tighten it so much that you stifle something that could have made you money. But you can also just try to make money with what you have. And, what if you just kept doubling your money? You went from $1 million to 2 to 4 to 8 and so on. You could do that. I 100% believe that Hollywood could do that. I believe that anyone, anywhere could do that in anything creative or really in a lot of things. If you just put your mind to it, I think people could do this. I think if you just, don't mind putting the sweat equity into it, you can almost do anything you want. And if you just have the mindset, like, I'm not going to be a billionaire today, but I'm going to be a better person tomorrow. I'm going to try to make money. And I think, people, I see lots of artists. I've always seen a lot of artists around or people that I've known. And I've just been like, just keep working at it. And if you don't mind thinking you're going to make $1 million, just try to make some money and, market your stuff online, put it on the internet, make a YouTube channel, put up YouTube shorts or TikTok. I mean, this is crazy now of you painting or of just your artwork, because now people can see it. And yeah, I know you're not going to make $1 million, but I mean, there are some people that will. I mean, there's always the 0.5% that will, but everybody can make something now and make money and a living doing it. It just might take some time and some effort, but it's possible now. And I think that we can do that. But I'll tell you this, I know of one thing that we probably maybe should stop caring about, and that's zombies. I don't know about you guys, but I love zombies. I've loved them for 20 years or so now, in particular, that I really kind of fell in love with. When I fell in love with horror a lot when I was in college in particular, I always liked horror, but I think when I was a kid, it actually kind of freaked me out a bit. But, then I just started to realize it's like more about fun and stuff in my brain. And then, when you're in college, it's, everybody loves horror movies then. And, I really started to go back and like love zombie movies from the Night of the Living Dead, and then in particular the original Dawn of the Dead, all the way up through now to Undead, the Australian horror movie that's a zombie film that also has a bunch of other weird crap in it at the end. It's got a really weird twist. I kind of recommend it because it's strange. I haven't watched it in a long time now, but Walking Dead. There's been a lot of announcements about all the new shows for The Walking Dead that's coming out, and is it just too much? I don't know. I don't know. What does everyone else think? I might be a little too much going on right now with The Walking Dead. I mean, there's not a lot of other zombie stuff. I mean, there's always like some zombie video game stuff, things like that. But I don't know about you guys, but maybe the zombie craze should take a break. The zombies should go back in the ground or decay and fall apart and wait for the next rebellion, the next zombie rebellion to appear. Because how can I miss you if you don't go away? And to me, I think zombies might need to go away for just a little bit. Pump the brakes on the zombie train. The Walking Dead just ended the normal series, and now we already got the series. And I know they've just put out some stuff about it with Negan and I can't remember her name, Glenn's wife. Her. So see, that's part of the problem. There's so much crap and there's all this stuff going on. It's hard to remember every single thing that goes on all the time. And her name is Maggie, by the way, Maggie. But it's just we need a break. I mean, it was way worse like 10 years ago, though. There was shows and movies everywhere. You couldn't escape zombies, even if it was something as more like a comical thing, like Plants vs. Zombies, the video game series. I mean, you couldn't, get away from it, but maybe let's take a break on it. Kind of like how vampires got oversaturated for a while. I actually think that could be the next craze. Let's kind of do some more vampire stuff. I've been watching a lot of vampire stuff recently. Let's maybe stop the zombies for 5 years and then let's revisit it. Then someone come up with something cool. And I think that's something that I believe we need to kind of stop, just because it's getting kind of boring. And right now, there's not a lot of creative ideas with zombies. I don't believe. I feel we're just kind of really kind of treading the bottom of the barrel, really just trying to, bring up anything we can. Whereas I think we should pump the brakes a little bit and let's just see if we can come up with something new for a little while. Or, it'd be cool is come up with some kind of new monster that could be the next vampire or the next zombie or the next mummy or Frankenstein. I'd love to have something new that's in that same vein of all those things that we can always just live on with in the future. But I guess that's hard when things aren't in the public domain. Zombies are public domain. Just the concept of zombies is public domain. Vampires are obviously public domain, so anybody can make a vampire thing. But if tomorrow I come out with some kind of, demon that lives on the moon, it's not someone else can't make something involving a demon that lives on the moon just because I own it and it's not public domain. So maybe that explains a little bit of it as well. But we did have a Winnie the Pooh horror movie come out. I haven't watched it yet. Has anyone else watched it? Because that's kind of interesting. That now that he's in public domain, we could maybe hey, Mickey Mouse comes out in public domain next year. Can we get a Mickey Mouse horror movie or a Mickey Mouse science fiction movie or something? I don't know. Like just kind of throwing out ideas. And let's try something different. But maybe public domain is what's going to drive another genre. Werewolves. Why we don't get werewolf stuff? We don't really see a lot of werewolf stuff. I mean, they're always kind of in like a lot of vampire things and stuff like that. Like Twilight had vampires. True Blood had werewolves. True Blood had werewolves. Twilight had werewolves, obviously. We all know that. And something like Underworld, the Underworld series, which was pretty fun for a while, that had werewolves, lycans in it that was pretty cool. But I don't know. It'd be cool to have something kind of different, like a different kind of monster that we all could agree on and just kind of play with it and experiment. Just let's get off zombies for a while and let's work on making another monster. Maybe we need to make a public consensus of a new kind of monster demon thing, and then let's make it public domain, and then anybody can just make stuff about it. And then we can kind of spark a whole new genre of horror movies, science fiction movies, other things like that kind of all are very similar, but no one actually owns the actual character itself. Everyone kind of benefits from it. That might be something kind of fun just because, I think that might be one of the reasons why zombies is kind of been overrun. I mean, even vampires have been overrun. No pun intended, I guess. But we need some fresh blood. We need some fresh blood. We need something different to sink our mouth into. And zombies needs to be just kind of done. I just felt like I needed to say that as something I was just seeing, and I'm like, I might watch what I think it's called Dead City. I think it's called The Walking Dead, Dead City, Negan and Maggie show. I think there's other shows as well coming out. I think theirs is called Dead City. That one's kind of interesting. Daryl's going to France, I think, which might be interesting. It's cool, but it's just at the same time, it's just like everything else. A lot of things going on in media right now. There's almost too much. There's almost too much media. It's very hard. You know, I don't know how many times I've went to talk to my brother or one of my friends, and they're like, hey, have you seen this show? Have you seen this show? It's like, no, because I'm watching another show. There's so much, and it's hard to believe that I would complain as an adult that there's too many shows that, you know, you used to wish that you had more, you know, right before streaming in particular, you just were glad to have a show. You were glad to see something on TV that you liked. You know, even though there was 400 channels, you still were so glad to find that one thing that you're like, oh, this is what I want. And now it's getting overrun, and you know, now it's, and then you still got all the old stuff, because now you all the old stuff's available on top of it as well. So you got just a literal pile of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, you know, maybe I'm just overthinking the zombie thing. That's very possible. And I don't know. You tell me what you guys think. I'm going to end this soon, but I was going to say one more thing, that I am checking a item off of my wrestling bucket list this coming weekend. I am going to New Japan Pro Wrestling in Washington, D.C. New Japan is coming to America. They're coming to America. YouTube, don't take this down. Hopefully. So they're going to be in Philadelphia as well, I believe, on that Sunday. They're in D.C. on Saturday. And I'm going to assume, I'm going to say spoiler alert, I guess, if you don't want to hear this. I think they're going to end up having a lot of those wrestlers at AEW next Wednesday, which is in Pittsburgh. I've thought about going, but they haven't announced anything yet. And if it's mostly the New Japan guys, I will have seen them this weekend. So it wouldn't really be a big surprise to me, unless Minoru Suzuki is going to be there, because I haven't seen him yet. And he doesn't look like he's going to be on the card this weekend. I don't think he's in America. I don't think he's on this tour. But if he is, and they announce him for Wednesday at Dynamite, which they're also, I believe, taping Rampage after the show as well, or before the show, however, I forget how they do it now. I think it's 2 hours of Dynamite, then the hour of Rampage. If they announce him for either one of those, I might end up going, just because that's kind of a bucket list wrestler. It really is. That's a bucket list wrestler. I don't know what I'm thinking. And it looks like an interesting card. I don't want to spoil too much for anyone, so just go online and look. You know, a lot of the Japanese mainstays are going to be there. Okada and Tanahashi are definitely going to be there. A lot of the New Japan Strong, the American division, is going to be there. And it looks like it might be a fun card. I wouldn't say it's going to be the strongest card that you could go see New Japan in, but they're in what's called the most generic, almost Soviet-sounding stadium, the Entertainment and Sports Arena. What a weird name. Even if you didn't want to have it sponsored by a company, could you come up with a name? Could it be named after a person? We're in D.C. Could it be called like the George Washington Arena? I mean, something, anything really. But I think that place holds 5,000 people. I watched a video, a guy on YouTube recorded a whole bunch of the stuff from last year's show they had there. I wanted to kind of see what this place looked like and see how many people went. And it looked pretty full. It was hard to tell. It was really dark, though, in his video, because it looks like they have the house lights turned down a lot. But it's a bucket list item. I'm definitely going to be recording stuff for that. I'm going to make a video next week when I get back in town. But I kind of can't wait, because that's going to be fun. I'm going with my best friend, Joe. We're going to be there all day Saturday, and we're just going to hang out. And there's also a horror movie convention in Hunt Valley, Maryland, which is 40 minutes north of there. Maybe I end up there for a little bit in the afternoon. William Shatner is going to be there. Former WCW champion David Arquette's going to be there. The T1000, that's probably the one I care about the most. Robert Patrick is going to be there. Christina Ricci is going to be there. There's a whole bunch of people. This actually looks pretty cool. It's called Monster Mania. I had popped up on my wife's Facebook, and she mentioned it to me, and it just happened to be the same weekend I'll be in D.C. So I was like, this is perfect. I'm originally from Maryland, but I'm not from that side of the state. But so I might end up going to that. That would be kind of an added bonus. It'd be fun as crap to go to. But I don't know. We'll see. The D.C. traffic, 40 minutes is 40 miles, might as well be 120 miles. Even though it'll be a Saturday, so it won't thankfully be during the week. And anyone who's ever traveled the Beltway would know you don't want to be on the Beltway unless you have to be on the Beltway. But I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to really spoil the card because I don't know how many people are really kind of seeing what it is. But they haven't really, you can see the card on their website, but you don't see it like in publicity. You don't even see a lot of people talking about it online about New Japan being here this weekend. I'm surprised no one said that New Japan's going to probably end up at Dynamite on Wednesday of next week. Because think about this. They have Forbidden Door in 2 months, month and a half, and they're already in town, or in the area at least, very similar. They're going to be in Philadelphia and then Pittsburgh. They're 4 hours away 3 days later. They could easily at least keep a handful of the guys there and work a couple matches, set up a couple matches for Forbidden Door. You would think Okada and Tanahashi would probably appear. I could see a rematch with Tanahashi as the face against the heel Moxley maybe at Forbidden Door, because now that he's part of the heel Blackpool Combat Club, maybe that's where they lead. I think you could see maybe some of the New Japan Strong guys as kind of somebody different. Carl Fredericks is always a really good, well-known, good wrestler for New Japan Strong. Maybe that you could do something there. I think that, Jay White just signed with AEW, just appeared on Dynamite. There could be something they tie in there for Forbidden Door. Sonata just won the IWGP World Championship just a couple days ago. I don't think he's on the card this weekend. I don't know if they're having shows in Japan as well. Maybe that's why they split, because there's a lot of guys that aren't on these American shows this weekend. There's guys that are on the Philadelphia show that aren't on the DC show, which I really have a hard time understanding, because you fly all these guys in to work one show when there's two shows as back to back. You think they'd have them work both in a way that would make sense. But, maybe Sonata appears. That'd be awesome, because Sonata's a really good wrestler, and I get to see the IWGP belt. As of right now, I've never seen the belt, and he's not scheduled. So if he's not scheduled, then, odds are them having the belt and him just being there won't happen. But, New Japan doesn't do a lot of like American style, like, oh, show up, appear and challenge people into matches. It's more traditional, like a sporting event. It's like a UFC fight. And it is going to be on pay-per-view. It's going to be on iPay-per-view. I think it's on Fight TV. It might be on some other apps as well. And I think the Japanese commentary ones will be immediately the next day on New Japan World, and then the English ones I think get added later on so that they get the pay-per-view revenue. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I haven't been to Washington, D.C. in 15, 20 years, I would say, something like that. It's been quite a while, but that'll be fun. If I get to go to this convention, this Monster Mania convention, that's an added bonus. That'll be fun. It's always something new and different to do. And I'll take video and footage, send it to everyone else, show it to you guys on YouTube. Just, keep an eye out. If you have any questions, feel free to message me at GeekySteveD pretty much anywhere on the internet, mostly Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I don't use my Facebook a lot. My Facebook page, maybe I should. I don't know if any of you guys out there think I should. Otherwise, send me messages on here on YouTube, or comment, because I will obviously answer any of your comments. If you have any questions, anything. Until next time, I will see you guys later. See ya.